Hello and welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast, where we invite you to spend just a few minutes with the staff here at Cook Library. I am Nate Goss, one of Cook's librarians, and I'm here with John Durning, owner of Pizzeria Deville, right off Milwaukee Avenue here in downtown Libertyville. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much.
This is our third episode in our locally sourced feature, where we have familiar faces from local businesses come on the podcast and talk just a little bit about a book that has special significance in their lives. So before we jump right into that, though, John, let's just talk a little bit about Pizzeria Deville. How long has Pizzeria Deville actually been open?
August 25th will be our 2-year anniversary.
That's great, yeah, so it's coming up pretty soon. And what you're doing here is, it's the wood-burning ovens, right, for the pizza?
Right, so it's a very traditional Neapolitan-style wood-fired pizzeria.
All right, and so what is it about the wood furnace style pizza that makes it unique and makes it taste so good?
Well, because it cooks at such a high temperature, you actually have to have a little bit of a different dough recipe and a very wet dough to stand up to that heat. It also, traditional ovens, a Lou Malnati's thin crust pizza will cook in 15-20 minutes. Ours cooks in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. I was actually here for the first time last Friday, and to me, it was definitely the dough that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
But also, we're actually here right now at Pizzeria Deville. It's got a really cool atmosphere to
Thank
it.
you.
I kind of like how you have, the whole wood feel permeates the whole place,
I am not a native born or even related to an Italian, so I felt like it was important to feature what we make our food from, and that is wood. So we sort of celebrate the wood element of what we do here.
Very cool. And just personally for you, what do you think is your favorite pizza that you have on your menu?
Well, there's one on the menu called My Favorite Pie, and it's a sliced
Fair enough, yeah.
meatball pizza with crushed red pepper and a couple kinds of cheeses, tomato sauce. And it's a pizza that I grew up loving at a place called Vinny's Pizzeria that my friends and I all went to as kids and spent an inordinate amount of time in. So I tried to replicate that pizza. I will say we have a new one called the PG Hot Honey Pie on the menu, which is 2 kinds of Italian-style salami, and then we put some chili-infused honey on it when it comes out of the oven. And that one is making a strong push for the podium, but My Favorite Pie will always be a tough one to displace.
Yeah, definitely. And so you said Vinny's Pizzeria. Where did you actually grow up?
I grew up in Scarsdale, New York, which is a suburban community, probably about a half an hour outside of the city.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead and let's switch gears to the book.
Perfect.
What is the book that you want to share with our listeners
Well,
today?
it's interesting. You brought up the fact that I'm from New York, and this book is very near and dear to many New Yorkers. It's a story called The Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge. And it's a children's book, actually. But the reason I chose this was, as a child, it really had a terrific impact on me. And then as I got older, I refound it and was able to introduce it to my kids. And the message in it is just, it's perfect. It's perfect for today. It's perfect for back then. So that's what I chose.
So before we get into the message, it's a children's book. It's nice and short, But in your own words, why don't you just maybe tell us what's the basic story of the Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge?
Sure. Well, the Little Red Lighthouse is actually a real thing. There's a little red lighthouse that sits on the banks of the Hudson River just underneath the George Washington Bridge in the Bronx. And the George Washington Bridge wasn't always there. And so the story starts before the George Washington Bridge is built and the important role that this little red lighthouse played. And then all of a sudden, this great gray bridge starts being built. And as it's being built, the Little Red Lighthouse begins to wonder what its role will be and what its impact on it will be. And as it comes to learn later that the bridge does have a sounding beam and a fog bell that help ward off ships.
So it's kind of encroaching on the lighthouse's territory.
Very much, yes. And so the lighthouse is feeling very sad that its important role on the river is going to be diminished or removed altogether. As it turns out, as many instances in life do, not everything is quite as cut and dry as it seems, and all of a sudden a storm comes in with a very big fog, and the bridge is unable to warn the ships. And there's actually one of my favorite passages says, the bridge says, "I call to the airplanes," cried the bridge. "I flash to the ships of the air, but you are still the master of the river. Quick, let your light shine again, each in his own place, little brother. I can barely get through it.
Yeah, it is really
because
good.
it's just awesome.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, you were like, here comes the Little Red Lighthouse,
Yeah.
and it's going to save the day.
Yeah.
And it feels so proud. But what was better than all of that was as a kid going to Yankee games or doing the little circle line, tourist line, you can't really see it because of the vegetation and trees by the park it's in. But as a kid, you'd just be saying, where is it? And then you'd see it from a boat. And if you were lucky enough to go on the Hudson River in a boat, and you'd be like, there it is. And he really, like, for me as a little kid, it was heroic what this Little Red Lighthouse did.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of New Yorkers really like took to it.
I don't even know if you probably don't remember the first time you read it because you were probably such a little kid.
No, I think it was read to me for
Yeah.
sure. I'm from a big family and I'm at the end of the line, so I think there was a tattered copy or two in my house.
Yeah.
But it was also one that, like, invariably a librarian would read to you when you were younger in school.
Sure.
It was, it's got wonderful watercolor pictures in it.
I was just going to mention, I
And-
love the art in this book. It's got that watercolor look to it. The
Yeah.
color palette's great. Yeah.
You can tell that it was done in the 1940s.
Yes.
And that a real artist, teamed up with the author to do it, because it comes through. So the fog, as they talk about the fog enveloping the ship, you literally see this fog in its hands taking the ship, grabbing the ship. And so as a little kid, you were like, come on, you got to save them.
Yeah.
And so, it's terrific. And,
it is.
And for me to have an opportunity, I can pick any book around, but the message of everyone having a place in this world, the big, the small, that everyone can contribute, like, what a great message for today. And to me, it's a nice book to reintroduce to people who maybe haven't read it, because it's a good one to share with your kids.
Definitely. And I imagine you've read it to your children as well.
Indeed. I would say I don't have a niece or a nephew who hasn't heard this story. And in New York, people talk about it. I had a bunch of friends in for a reunion, and we talked a little bit about the bridge and the lighthouse underneath, and someone goes, remember that book? I was like, it's the greatest. And everybody chimed in. Like, of course we remember that book. Yeah. Everyone had it. So it's good that it's sort of back out there again.
That's so great. And you're absolutely right. It's got this great message about everyone having a role to play. And I imagine, as being a restaurant or business owner, that probably has to come into play too, which is how you work in life,
Yeah. I have such an appreciation for everyone who works here, but the guys who do the hardest work and are never seen publicly, those are the ones that really, they ring true to me. I have a big mouth, and lots of people know when I'm around because I'm loud. But with that said, as the youngest in my family, you were always looking for your spot.
Sure.
And I like to think that I'm looking out for those guys who need to find their spot.
Yeah.
And so I love the way it ties to my business. I like the way that it ties to my family, and the idea that everyone has a role, and never forget that, and that the person at school who might be weak in one thing could be very strong in another way, and it's important to just keep that in mind.
Yeah, because I think what the book shows is that if that person isn't doing their job, there's a lot of chaos that can happen. It's like everybody needs to do their. It's not just that everyone has their own.
In the case of the
role.
lighthouse, all the boats would have crashed.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And the bridge couldn't have done anything about it.
Yeah.
And the best part is the bridge, who I used to sort of refer to as like the dad.
Yeah.
But he calls him a brother. He recognizes it immediately.
Yeah.
The importance of the small person. And that part I always like too. I said, that bridge, he's looking out for him. So as a kid, you go over the bridge, I'd be like, I always felt pretty good going over that bridge.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this
it's
topic,
perfect.
John.
Yeah, no.
But I want to thank you so much for talking with us today on the podcast.
I love being part of it. I hope it came out okay.
It came out great, man. And we definitely want to invite all of our listeners to try out Pizzeria Deville, and definitely come in and say hi to John. I see that you're always walking around, it seems like, when you're here.
It's part of why we opened, so that we could be part of the community. But thank you.
All right, so if you want to check out the Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge, that's by Hildegard H. Swift and Lynn Ward. We actually currently have it available electronically as a video read aloud via the free Hoopla app, which you can download to any tablet or smartphone. And I really do recommend it. That's what I did before I came here. It's this very cool narrated sort of video of this book, and you see all the illustrations and everything. So
I will say you can probably also find it online.
Yeah.
And it's one of these books that it's worth having in the shelf, whether you are a parent a grandparent, whoever. This is one worth having, to be sure.
For sure. And so definitely check that out if you can grab a copy of this. We also want to ask you to head over to the library's website, cooklib.org, to find out more about whatever's piquing your curiosity. Maybe even browse the library's catalog for some books to learn about pizza. I don't know. Be sure to also visit Shelf Life, the library's blog. That can be found at shelflife.cooklib.org. It's where we write up book reviews and other library-related news. It's also where this podcast is hosted. If you have any further comments or any questions, you can always shoot us an email. The address is webmaster@cooklib.org. If you like what we're doing, continue to please tell your friends and maybe leave us a kind rating on iTunes. We will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.